Today, the BBB is releasing an in-depth study into some very problematic issues with the interstate moving industry. We want to be clear that we really don't, this is not an industry problem. This is a problem with some bad actors within the industry. And our study reveals that the individuals that operate these rogue companies that take advantage of people that are involved in particularly interstate moves can be extremely problematic. They can take your goods hostage. They'll provide quotes for moves that don't represent anything like what the reality is going to be when you get the final bill. And then, of course, if you're not willing to pay the price, in many cases they have your possessions, and it can be extremely troubling to get all of this unwound. So we are really proud of the work that our International Investigation Initiative has done in providing this study. We're fortunate today to have the author of the study, Steve Baker. He's our lead international investigator for the BBB's International Investigations Initiative. And Steve has compiled a variety of in-depth studies into the schemes and scams and problematic business practices that impact consumers in a very significant way. And because of the pandemic that we're in with COVID-19, clearly a lot of people are considering moves out of heavily populated areas just because of what they've seen happening in those heavily populated areas. Clearly, the economic environment that we're under is forcing people to make moves that they didn't anticipate they were going to be having to make. And so we're going to see, and we are already seeing, significant spikes in the number of interstate moves that are occurring. And so the purpose of our conference today is to shed light on some very significant issues within the industry. We have industry experts with us today that will talk about the bright side, the ethical side, the right side of this industry. We have our author. We have a couple of victims that are going to talk about their up close and personal experience with these bad actors. And we'll also have some experts from government and law enforcement as well. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Jeff. He'll provide some quick housekeeping items, just that'll kind of guide us through the press conference. Jeff will also be managing the Q&A, so he can explain to you how, once we get to a place where we're going to make questions available, that he'll get you on board. And then finally, Jeff will wrap up the conference. I'll be departing at some point during the conference for another commitment, and Jeff's going to take care of the wrap up. So with that, turn it over to Jeff Niebaum from the BBB's Communications Department.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Just a couple housekeeping items. Since this is a Zoom meeting, we would like to keep everybody on mute, and I can monitor that as well. So if you are not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. Also, for the question and answer, I direct your attention down the chat box to do this as smoothly as possible. If you do have a question, please type it in the chat box with your name, the station you're with, and who you would like to direct the question to. And that way we can be as specific as possible and roll through the questions, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there. And finally, this is being recorded, and we will be sending out a press packet with the study and images that you can use along with the recording that you can refer back to at the end. Thank you, and back to you, Jim.
Okay, so our lineup today, we're going to start off with Steve Baker. He's the author of the study, and I've already talked a little bit about Steve's background. Steve is the former director of the FTC Midwest. We're super blessed to have him involved doing this deep investigative work for the Better Business Bureau over the last few years. So Steve will make some opening comments. And then we will also hear from one of our victims, Russell Sem. And Russell is going to share his story, and we're going to open up for Q&A for Russell right after he speaks, because he has to leave early as well. And then we will go to Jill Dempsey. She is Senior Special Agent for the Department of Transportation, Office of Inspector General. She'll talk about the government side, the enforcement side of this. And then we will have Jeff Nog, who is the Senior VP of Business Development for iGo Van and Storage, to talk about the right side of this industry and the concerns that the industry has about the bad actors within it. And then we will wrap up with James Macher, and James is going to talk about the experience that he had firsthand with these bad actors. And then I believe Jeff will open it up for Q&A. So again, thank you so much for attending today and for being partners with the Better Business Bureau in shedding light on problematic issues that it is very important for viewers, readers, and listeners of your various stations to get tuned into. So thanks for your help in getting the good word out. And with that, I will turn it over to my good friend, Steve Baker. Steve.
Okay. As you know, we've been doing studies of serious scams and frauds that are very widespread and that people are very likely to encounter. This one takes a look at scams in long-distance interstate moves. What we found is there is a large group of moving scams that rip off tens of thousands of people every year. Most or all use the same illegal tactics to rip people off. Moving scams are a major issue for the Better Business Bureaus. We focused on interstate moves because that's where the scammers concentrate on and where the most serious problems arise. Most of us don't hire people to do long distance moves for more than a few times in our lives. It's not something most of us have much experience with. Moving's hard work and it's not cheap or simple. Professional movers often have decades of experience with trained employees in their own trucks. They compete with one another on price and service, often have their own warehouses and drivers, and many belong to the American Moving and Storage Association in the US or Canadian Movers Association in Canada. They care about their reputations, though problems can come up. They comply with regulations and I'll often spend years building trust with the public. These honest companies usually do estimates in person. They visit your home, look at your goods, peer into the backs of closets and into garages, and give binding estimates based on weight, not volume, of your goods. They arrange for the pickup and delivery date, pack goods carefully, and deliver and unload when promised. You may need to make a relatively small down payment, but you don't pay the remainder until after they deliver and unload. They also have protocols to deal with virus issues right now for people concerned about that, and that is a point I would think would be important for consumers. Moving scams operate very differently and problems abound. These scammers advertise heavily on the internet. Often they have sponsored links to bring them high in search results. And they do a very good job of marketing themselves. They have well-designed websites. They claim to be very professional and claim falsely that they've been in business with many years of experience. And often they have fake reviews on their websites from supposedly happy consumers. They're friendly and helpful on the telephone. They don't give estimates in person, but quote a very low price for the move. But that's not what people ultimately have to pay. So what kinds of problems do people encounter with moving scams? Drastically increased prices, deliveries that often are weeks or months late, many lost or broken goods, and demand people pay even more money when goods are delivered. And if victims can't or won't pay the extra money in cash, the driver just drives off with their goods and people have no idea where their stuff even is. Moving scams quote an initial lowball price based on the volume or cubic feet of the goods, but then after they have loaded the goods, they claim that there was more than estimated demand, a much higher price, often double or triple the initial estimate. At this point, they effectively have people's goods held hostage. And if you don't agree to the higher price, they say they'll just unload the goods on the curb. Many people really feel stuck at this point. People are forced to make large payments, often in cash, if they want to get moved, and they worry that they may not get their belongings back at all if they don't go along. It is illegal to increase the price after goods are loaded, and it is illegal to give estimates based on volume. Those have to be based on weight, which is far easier to check, and they can't charge more than 10% more than the estimate before they deliver the goods. What's more, people doing the loading and unloading are not the company you signed up with. People aren't told that most of these moving scammers are brokers or sell the job to other companies or drivers. Thus, the company that shows up to do the move may be completely different from the thought you'd hired. Often they show up in rented trucks rather than moving vans. And these operations also hire local temp employees to do the unloading and loading. One victim we talked to recognized that the people moving their goods were actually from a local homeless shelter. As you'd imagine, this greatly increases the chances of goods being broken. Many victims tell us that their goods were not delivered until weeks or months after they were promised. They arrived at new homes without items they needed and spent weeks sleeping on the floor, desperate for the belongings to arrive. We talked to one victim who never received her belongings, ever. Moving scams doing city-to-city moves unload the goods into a storage area, wait until they have goods from others moving the same place, and only then do they drive to the new city to unload. Again, this intermediate loading and unloading greatly increases the chance that goods will be broken, lost, or mixed up with those from other people. And despite promises made on the phone, the contracts used by these scam operations give them a 20-day window to deliver goods, and they often arrive even later than that. And when they do arrive, they demand additional money in cash or they won't unload. And good luck getting money back from these scammers for lost or damaged goods. They only have minimal liability coverage of 60 cents per pound. So if a $1,000 stereo is damaged, they only have to pay $6. Many people we've talked to have filed claims and waited months when they have thousands of dollars in damages, were eventually offered only $100 or so. So how do you avoid getting hooked by these crooks? I can hardly stress that a simple internet search will not do it. You really have to research these moving companies carefully. One place you can go to is BBB.org, where you can find company ratings and see complaints that have been filed against them. BBB also has an online tool to connect you with accredited businesses, including movers that have agreed to the BBB standards of conduct. And you can also look to see if there's complaints filed Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and the major trade associations have referral programs where honest movers can provide competing estimates. And what do you do if you find you're involved with a crooked mover, such as one that jacks up the price our goods are loaded? People need to complain to BBB and to the FMCSA immediately and let the scam movers know you've done that. Doing this can often help. Moving scammers are such a big problem that United and Mayflower Van Lines fund a free service called Move Rescue that help people involved with scam movers. They know the tricks, and they helped over 1,000 victims last year. So who's behind all this? Seems to be an organized and interrelated group of scammers that all use the same tactics. They may claim to be located in cities around the US, but those are often just mail drops. We've identified large groups of these crooks that live in South Florida, another group in San Jose, California. The Inspector General's Office of the Department of Transportation, who you're going to hear from, has issued wanted posters for 33 moving scammers. All but one of them were born in Israel. Because they change business names frequently, they're often hard to identify. Obviously, there needs to be more law enforcement attention to this problem. The Florida Attorney General, the FMCSA, and the DOT Inspector General have all made efforts to bring this to an end, but the cases are complicated and there are lots of scammers. BBB has a great deal of information on many of these scammers and are actively working to help law enforcement with this scourge. So that's basically what we have. We've got a real problem out there. Jim, you're on mute.
All right. Thanks, Steve. We appreciate the information. Steve will be available for the Q&A at the end of the conference. And now we're going to go to Russell Sem. Russell he's had firsthand experience at the hand of these crooks. He's going to share his experience. And again, we're going to make Q&A available for Russell immediately after his comments. And then from there, we'll go to Jill Dempsey from the DOT. So we can unmute Russell, and I think you're ready to go, Russell. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we got you.
So we built a home in Oregon. We live in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I have used professional movers many years ago, was satisfied with that. I retired, and we decided to have the more important items in our household moved first. I went on the internet. Unfortunately, the scenario that was just given is perfect. I mean, exactly what happened to me. I did a search, and it pulled up multiple van line companies. The one that was rated #1 was called Pullman Worldwide. I went to their website. They had multiple good reviews, which I'm sure were fake now. I called them, and I called several other movers actually, and got some competitive bids. Their bid really wasn't that much lower than the other two bids I got. Of course, I don't know if those other companies were also scammers, but they guaranteed the delivery date. So we decided to go with them because we could arrange to fly out and be there when our furniture and stuff arrived. That was all supposed to happen. They did pick up the items, and then we flew out to Oregon and waited, and our furniture never came. So I contacted the representative I worked with, James Portman, who assured me the stuff would be there. I got a hold of their service department number. A lady said, well, it's going to be there 2 months later. It did arrive. We had to leave, went back to Lincoln because at that time I was still working. The furniture, I got a call. It was going to arrive in 4 days. It turned out it was being stored in Kansas City during that time. So I arranged to have someone accept the furniture. It arrived, and they demanded cash to unload the furniture, or they were just going to drive away. So our friend gave them cash and took the furniture and the boxes and the supplies and stuff we had. Virtually everything was damaged. The furniture, we had selected our best pieces of furniture that were things that meant a lot to us and were in perfect shape. The corners were smashed, drawers were busted, the framing where you put drawers in were broken. I mean, it's just a total mess, disaster. So none of the furniture that we sent was usable at this time. We contacted them right away. They said it's all insured. We said we wanted to file a claim. So they asked us to email pictures of the damage, which we did. And then at this point, they started not responding to calls and emails. When I called Mr. Portman, it would just literally hang up, wouldn't even, just as soon as I identified myself. The lady in the customer service department said, well, it'll be 3 months before we can process your claim. Of course, 3 months went by, nothing. And at that point, they never would respond to anything at all. I did eventually file a complaint with the Attorney General's office for the state of Nebraska. I haven't heard back from anything. Most recently, I called them and they said because of the COVID virus, they're no longer doing any active processing of claims, but that they would be picking things up in the future. Subsequently, their website is gone. I did actually look at the Better Business Bureau website before I hired them. They didn't have a rating and they weren't registered with them. I didn't go any farther, unfortunately, than that. Now the Better Business Bureau does have the rating for them and alert warnings and everything. And apparently, I just realized this in the interim, they were associated with Vaughn moving out of Omaha. So I'm going to try and attempt to contact them, but my suspicion is that I won't get anywhere with that. We're currently on the road right now in Boise, Idaho, on the way to Oregon, moving ourselves with the remaining furniture we have because we just didn't trust the industry anymore, unfortunately. So I guess that's our story.
Before we get into the question, I just have a quick question. Was there a disparity between what you were quoted as a price and then what needed to be paid in order to receive your goods?
Yes, yeah, I forgot to mention that. So we were quoted a price. Then when they picked it up, they wanted more money at the time, and they wanted everything in cash. They wouldn't accept credit cards or anything like that. So we unfortunately paid everything to them without any way to go through the credit card company or anything like that.
All right, we can open it up for questions. Just please type your name and the station in the chat box, and I will call on you. Steve Baker does have a question. How long did you have to wait for your stuff to arrive?
it was 3 months total time that they were late in getting the furniture there.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions?
Okay. Hey, Russell, thank you so much. And good luck with the rest of your move. When you get everything settled, send us all an invite to the open house. Okay.
Okay. Thank you ever so much for your help in looking into this industry. It's a real problem. And like I said, I moved with 2 professional movers before. It was Wheaton Van Line and IGO Van Line. We were totally happy with them, and I wish now we had gone back to them as opposed to using the internet search.
We did have a question come in real quick, Russell, if you could stay on for 1 second. Nick, I will let you, Nick from KTV has the question, and Nick, you can unmute yourself and ask Russell the question yourself if you like.
Thank you so much, sir. Russell, first off, Nick Amatangelo, KETV from Omaha. I'm so sorry that this happened to you and your family. Could you talk a little bit about the emotions when you finally did get that furniture and realized it was damaged? Talk about what you were feeling, and were there any sentimental items that got broken because of this?
Yes, we felt like we were totally betrayed and lost and abandoned. When we didn't realize what all had happened until we then went out later, about a month after that, and we walked in expecting to see the stuff that we had planned on living with in our new home for the rest of our lives, and we were just horrified. We went around taking the pictures, and then when we contacted them, we just felt like totally abandoned. I mean, helpless. I did talk with a lawyer about things, and he said it was about, well, it was insured for supposedly $18,000 plus some dollars. He said by the time we pay for the legal fees and all that, and the likelihood of getting any recovery was so low, they advised us just to, suck it up or whatever. We had, pictures and personal items. We had collections of glassware and stuff that we have accumulated over the years that were damaged as well. So yeah, we lost not only functional, well, these were actually all selected items. We thought that we would move and pay for the things that were most important to us at the time. And it was worth that money, the thousands of dollars that they were charging for that, to see that they arrived safely.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick, for that question. Any more questions for Russell before he heads out? All right. Thanks, Russell.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Russell. And now we'll move to Jill Dempsey. She is the Senior Special Agent for the Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General. And she makes some comments on sort of the regulatory side of this and provides some perspective from that point of view. So I'll turn it over to you now, Jill. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. I thank the Better Business Bureau for extending an invitation to participate in today's event, as well as thanking all of you for attending and participating. The U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General conducts criminal, civil, and administrative investigations of allegations related to fraud, waste, and abuse within the department, its programs, and grantees. We conduct investigations that help protect consumers from fraud in connection with Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's regulatory programs, which includes household good movers, shippers, and freight forwarders. Though the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is responsible for the civil enforcement of regulations governing interstate transportation of household goods, OIG investigations and their subsequent prosecutions are separate from but complement FMCSA's regulatory program. DOT OIG investigations generally involve the most egregious bad actors. Our household good criminal investigations are often conducted with federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, as well as other entities, and includes assistance from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Our investigations may initiate from a variety of sources, including complaints reported to DOT-OIG, referrals from other agencies, including FMCSA, that's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, notifications from other law enforcement partners and stakeholders, among other sources. Likewise, our investigations may result in prosecutions in federal, state, or local courts. I'd like to share with you several suggestions that we refer to as red flag indicators. These experiences should sound alarm bells with consumers. When viewing the moving company's website, it does not contain a local address, and it does not contain information relative to their DOT number or insurance. When customers call a company, the telephone is answered with a generic greeting, such as movers or moving company, rather than the company's complete name. The mover chooses to give an estimate over the telephone or the internet without agreeing to an on-site inspection of the household goods. The mover does not provide either a binding or a non-binding written estimate. The mover does not provide a booklet named Your Rights and Responsibilities when you move. The movers are required by federal regulation to supply their customers with this booklet in the planning stages of interstate moves. The moving company demands cash or large deposits before the move. Then on moving day, an unmarked or rental truck arrives rather than a marked company-owned vehicle. On moving day, the driver or foreman will request the consumer to sign blank documents before beginning to load the goods. We urge consumers to never sign blank forms and remind you to read everything before you sign. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Excuse me. Consumers have multiple options to report complaints related to household good experiences. The Department of Transportation hosts a hotline center, which is staffed 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. And complaints may also be transmitted online. Jeff, if I could ask you to move to the next slide. Thank you. This slide presented now offers the information related to DOT-OIG's Hotline Center, as well as the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's contact information. We urge you to take advantage of these resources and look around the websites. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and your attention.
Thank you so much, Jill, for attending today. We appreciate your comments. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Nog. As I mentioned previously, Jeff is the Senior Vice President for Business Development for IGO Van and Storage. And as I said, he represents the bright side, the right side of this industry, and I think the more common aspect of this industry. Bad actors tend to give many different industries troublesome issues regarding reputational problems. And I know that Jeff's dealing with some of that himself, and he can share some experience from inside the industry. So Jeff, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again for showing up today. Appreciate you. You need to unmute.
Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
Hey,
You're with us.
my name's Jeff. Yes, my name's Jeff Nog. I'm actually also one of the co-owners of IGO Van and Storage Company. We are one of the top agents all around the country for United Van Lines. This is our family organization. We've been in Omaha since 1898. Company was started by my grandpa and his brothers, and now is run by my twin brother and I, third generation here in Omaha. We also have offices in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Sioux City, Iowa. And our main line of business is corporate house of good relocation, just residential house of good relocation, as well as office moving and warehouse storage projects. But definitely the issue you bring up is a huge one. And with me being one of the co-owners, it's a big part of what I tackle every day, actually, is really educating customers. Over the last couple of years, I've actually taken it upon myself to actually reach out to every prospective customer in Household Good Moving that our coordinators and our salesmen talk to, because I want to introduce myself, want to make sure they know I care about their move experience as well, and that I'm here to help come up with a customized move solution. And I'm also here to educate against these rogue movers, as we call them. And I find out a lot about these things just by these conversations. And so, especially in terms of if there's situations where we don't get a move, or we're in the process, the customer's in the process of deciding, a lot of times that's where I find out they are talking to a rogue mover, and that's where I'm able to hopefully educate them earlier on in terms of what to look for and what the red flags are. And a lot of times I tackle it before a bad situation happens. Sometimes a customer, despite me telling them things and educating them, they're still enticed by the price and they go with that mover. And then a lot of times I'll get a call back after the move saying, Jeff, I should have listened to you. But that's, I mean, it's a very enticing thing with the price. Also nowadays, not only do certain people have to pay for their own moves, but even if it is a corporate move, corporations are actually, the trend is going to lump sum moves, where the corporations aren't really taking as much of a on-hand effort with like more of a reload program. They're basically giving them money to handle their move. And unfortunately, a lot of these employees for these companies are trying to profit off their move. And the way they do that is by going with a rogue mover online. And then unfortunately, they have a horrible experience and it ends up not being worth what they're trying to do. So I think the big things that it just affects us because we feel we do things the right way and we do it in a professional manner. And I think the real key is education, and really being proactive in that education. And the main things we talk about a lot are, you can really tell if it's a rogue mover if they ask for a deposit. With us, with United Van Lines, the options for payment are a customer can put a credit card on file, and that card is run on load day through our system with United Van Lines. Now, if a customer feels uncomfortable with that, the other option is for them to get a certified check and to pay the driver right before delivery happens. So there's definitely options depending on how a customer wants to feel comfortable in terms of their payment. You also want to make sure you get a physical, ideally, or you can tell when you have a professional virtual move estimate versus something that's subpar technology-wise, or someone trying to just do it over the phone. Obviously, with COVID, we were required for a number of months to just do virtuals. And we still do virtuals depending on the customer and what they feel comfortable with. But the best is obviously a physical estimate. Reviews are a huge thing I tout. I refer people, number one, to the Better Business Bureau. The one thing I do educate them on is that what I've learned over the years is that the grades on the Better Business Bureau, I'm not sure how you guys update them, but I've seen some movers that aren't as good potentially, that maybe their grades might still not have caught up to what their complaints have caught up to, where they might have an A, but their complaints, they have 50 complaints. So I'm sure that's something in your process that is just part of that. I think it's like a computer generated type formula. But that's something I educate on. I say you got to look more at reviews and complaints. Those are the most important things to do. And it's awesome when you guys got the reviews on the website. That's really helped. And then the complaints are huge. I mean, if you see a company that has 0 complaints over a year or over 3 years versus a company that's 50, I mean, that's a huge red flag. Even if you see certain places online, they might have good reviews. As you guys have discussed, sometimes there's ways that you can do fake reviews. The other thing I tell customers to watch out for are don't just look at reviews on someone's own website. Look at reviews on third-party websites that you can just Google and find and Google. In our case, you'd look up I Go Van and Storage Company reviews, and there's definitely a lot of different sites that'll come up. The other thing I do tell, even on the third-party websites, to look out for is if you see a bunch of 5 stars and a bunch of 1 stars, I think that's a red flag as well, because sometimes people can circumvent the process. And if a company, regardless of if they have some 5 stars, has a ton of 1-star reviews, that's a red flag as well. I think another point to get across is that Household Good Moving is way more complicated than most customers think. It's extremely detailed. There's a lot of different types of services, especially nowadays, that customers can have. And so you really need to be comfortable with not only what the estimate says, but making sure you 100% understand what you're getting service-wise. And that's why when we present estimates as a company, we not only present an attached estimate, but we also present a presentation that explains exactly what's included, as well as any special notes that we discuss with the customer in terms of what they may do versus us, just so that we're all on the same page. Along that same line, you guys were talking about charges that may be charged after the move is in process. A big charge to note that was kind of problem like in the overall industry over the years that United Van Lines has corrected is a destination shuttle. And what that is when the truck cannot get access, like a big semi cannot get access at destination. In the past, customers would have to pay more money because we would not know what that access was until we got there. United Van Lines estimates now the customer at destination, if there's a shuttle involved, they do not get charged. It's something that was built into our pricing that customers do not get charged if there's a destination shuttle or some bad access problems at destination, which kind of curbs that problem of having to ask for more money at delivery, which was definitely a reasonable request in the past, but United Van Lines made a conscious effort to try to change that, and they did it in a great way, which is a big differentiator for our organization. As you guys were saying also, the internet search, you just got to go a lot deeper than people usually go. And unfortunately, a lot of customers don't take the time to even look up internet searches as well on reviews as well. So it's really something that you got to do. Valuation coverage, as you guys discussed, is a big thing. The federal government requires that we present the best coverage in every first estimate we give, the full value protection, zero deductible coverage. Unfortunately, if a mover does not present that, that's a red flag. Everyone knows that you're required to present that on the first estimate. A customer can later change to a different level if they'd like, but that is something, a big factor that they got to look at. Another big part is you want to know the expectations of customer service that you're going to get on a move. A lot of movers, they book the move and they're gone. They don't follow up every day. They don't let them know what time the movers are going to be out there each day. They don't check and see how they're doing and each day's going. They don't follow up on delivery. And most importantly, they don't see if they have any questions at the end of the process. Any reputable mover is going to explain honestly how the claims process works. Because in any good move, there still may be a customer that may call us and say, geez, Jeff, your crew was awesome. I really liked how you guys handled the move, but I did notice a little bit of damage on my coffee table. What should I do? And any reputable mover is going to explain to them the process and show them how it works, and they're going to handle it in a fair and efficient manner. So any good mover, any reputable mover is not going to hide from talking about the claims process, because in moving, if any company tells you that they don't ever damage anything, that's not true. The key is, are you working with a reputable mover that you trust that's going to handle it in a fair and efficient manner? I think those are the main points. I guess the last point would be you guys were talking about the delivery spread. I always tell customers the delivery spread is only as good as who's telling you what it is. So you have to trust that the delivery spread they're giving to you, that they're going to do their best to get it there within that spread. A lot of companies will give these low spread delivery spreads, and they're going to be way late, and they know they're going to be way late, but they just quote it wrong to get the move. So you just have to be extremely careful. And
looks like you might have froze up, Jeff. But thank you for that great insight from a reputable mover's standpoint, and going into detail of what customers should really look for when hiring a moving company. Next, we're going to move on to our final victim, Jim Nature. And he will say a few words, and then we will open it up for Q&A. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeff. Let me, that's curious. Okay, well, let's just go that way. Let me begin by thanking the Better Business Bureau for the opportunity to relate my horrific tale about my moving experience. And I'll try to keep this brief so we can move on to overall questions and answers. My experience was over a year and a half ago. In December 2018, I had arranged for Gateway Moving and Storage to move the contents of my sister's apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, to a storage unit in Manhattan, Kansas, where I live. I had originally contacted 3 moving companies to get estimates, and I chose Gateway because they had received very good reviews, including third-party review website reviews, and because their salesperson was quite helpful over the phone, including when he did the estimate of the cost based on my description and the inventory of the items and furniture. The estimate I got was for transporting 726 cubic feet of goods. It was not by weight, at a cost of $2,998. Gateway gave me a 2-day window for when the movers would arrive, either December 17th or the 18th. And they also arranged for the transport of my sister's car from Cleveland to Manhattan. The company assured me that their men and trucks would be there on one of those 2 days. Well, I had to fly to Cleveland to be ready for the move. And when I got there, I called Gateway and was informed that the auto transport had been canceled without my approval. So I had to scramble to find another transport, which I did, though without any appreciable help from Gateway, at a cost of $300, or what Gateway had quoted me. Even more troubling was the fact that Gateway's movers never showed up on either day and didn't arrive until Wednesday, December 19th. From then on, things unraveled badly. The movers were supposed to arrive in the late morning or early afternoon, but they didn't show up until 10:30 at night in a Penske rental truck. Also, they didn't have proper packing materials and had to go to Walmart to buy boxes. Hence, they didn't begin loading until about 11:15 at night. At 2:30 in the morning, they had loaded about 80% of the apartment's contents, and the driver told me that he still had room in the truck for about 100 cubic feet of the estimated 726. Since I had a 7:30 morning flight back to Manhattan and needed to get a few hours of sleep, I had to leave the apartment and go to my hotel before all the loading and final confirmation of space were completed. The driver told me that would be okay and said he'd drop off the apartment keys to the complex's management. Well, the next day I received a text from the driver saying that the total load has supposedly come to 1,320 cubic feet, nearly double the estimate, and that I'd be charged an additional $2,250. I was never provided any proof that the cubic footage actually came to that total, but instead was told that I'd now have to pay a little under $3,000 at delivery. On top of that, the crew failed to deliver the apartment keys to the manager. When the movers arrived to deliver the goods at the storage unit in Kansas, it became apparent to me, while looking at the load in the truck, that the goods did not take up anywhere near the supposed 1,320 cubic feet. Well, after unloading about half the items into the storage unit, the delivery crew refused to unload anything else unless I paid the full $2,994, which they demanded in cash. I did that, and after I paid that amount and the unloading was completed, I measured the total space occupied in the storage facility. This is one advantage of going to a storage facility rather than having these goods taken to an apartment. I measured the total space, and sure enough, it came to slightly under 870 cubic feet. Hence, Gateway had overcharged me by 530 cubic feet, or $1,745. When I called the company to register my concern, I was told I'd have to file a claim. I did so, including substantial documentation, including photos to verify how much space in the storage unit was taken up. Gateway then sent me an email saying that they'd received my claim and that processing it would take up to 120 days. Well, lo and behold, 120 days passed and I heard nothing. So I called the company in mid-June of 2019, and after being transferred around to several people, was finally told flatly that my claim was being denied. When I asked why, the person, a man named Marley, kind of an ominous name out of Dickens, said that I needed to prove that the household goods filled a unit of 900 cubic feet or less. When I asked how he expected me to do that, he didn't give me any answer and instead kept asking me questions about the type of trucks that had picked up the goods and what size the trucks were, something I couldn't provide since the moving crews had refused to allow me to get into the trucks to measure the storage bed of either truck. When I told Marley, then I was very upset at his decision and that I'd be filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. He said, okay, laughed and hung up, and that's the last I heard of Gateway.
Well, thank you, Jim, for sharing your story. We are very sorry that happened to you. It's kind of crazy. This is like stuff that movies is made out of, but unfortunately, it happened to you in real life. So thanks for joining us today and sharing your story. So thank you again for everybody joining us today, and look for those materials. And we will see you soon. Have a great day.